Welcome back to The Wizard of Cause. This is our final chapter. Let's summarize. Lionheart's case study data indicated a possible link between the game and behavior, and the bad behavior. Since case studies don't detect actual links between variables, Lionheart turned to Catnip the Kitty Wizard for help on that quest. She followed the procedures and analyses of correlational research, and the results confirmed her correlational hypothesis that as Game of Thrones playing increased, so did bad behavior. So yes, there was a link, but what does that mean? Lionheart had made the nearly irresistible thinking error in assuming that association proves causation. No matter how strong the correlation, it does not. Research methods are like tools. If we have a question about brain activity rather than brain structure, we need to use the right tool, which would be the functional MRI or a PET scan rather than the MRI or a CAT scan. The only form of research that takes the steps to reveal a causal relationship between variables is the experimental method. Chapter 3, The Answer. Excuse me. The experimental method. Objectives. Explain the purpose of the experimental method of research. Compare and contrast independent and dependent variables, and explain the importance of random assignment of subjects to the experimental or the control group. 2 weeks later. Take him to the tower, declared King Crimson. Based on the misinterpretation thereof, the king had destroyed his beloved game. Yet the bad behavior continued. It turned out that his beloved game was only associated somehow with the bad behavior and not the cause of the bad behavior. The king's anger was legend. Lionheart had been spared a public beheading only because the king's beloved daughter had begged for Lionheart's life to be spared. Not knowing what was causing the bad behavior, all of game night had to be canceled. The children of Geek behaved well, but were bored and annoyed their parents somewhat. The king fell into a funk and stopped designing games, feeling froggy and foolish. A year had passed, and one evening Leia snuck to the tower and spoke feverishly to Lionheart. Of this I was told, there is a certain Wizard of Cause in a faraway land who has a magic power to determine if one thing causes another. Lionheart, I have been thinking and thinking if something else may have caused our bad behavior. I remember that a new grog replaced the old grog in the game parlors right around the time we started playing Game of Thrones. So maybe it's the new grog that caused our bad behavior. I sent my lady-in-waiting to summon the Wizard of Cause, that he might finally solve our mystery, and you will be freed from the tower, my beloved. And so it was that the Wizard of Cause was summoned, came, and performed his magic, which it seems was just a series of precise steps that must be taken to assess cause and effect relationships. And so he did secretly, with a great air of mystery, take the following steps. Objective 7. The purpose of the experimental method is to assess cause and effect relationships between variables. Step 1 is to develop a hypothesis. So the wizard developed a testable prediction. If you drink new grog, you will behave badly. The independent variable is the cause variable, which would be the new grog, and the dependent variable is the effect variable, which would be incidence of bad behavior. Step 2 is random assignment. He then randomly assigned Teens of Geek into 2 groups, an experimental group and a control group. We use random assignment so that any characteristics that might affect the outcome, for example, teens with aggressive personalities or particular status levels, that these characteristics have an equal chance of being in either group so as not to systematically impact just one group, which could invalidate and confound the data. So, Objective 9, random assignment controls for personal variables that could affect the outcome. And remember, we're only interested in revealing if the new grog causes the bad behavior. Step 3, manipulating the independent variable. Next, the wizard manipulated the independent variable. So what is manipulation? Well, there's different treatments for the groups to generate comparison data. The experimental group, of course, drank the new grog, and the control group drank water that was about the same color, the same kind of glass, the same temperature, maybe even had some flavor added to it. Because the control group needs to experience the same conditions except without the treatment, which is the new grog. So, objective 8, the independent variable is varied or manipulated to create comparison data. Measuring the dependent variable, step 4. The wizard then counted the number of bad behaviors exhibited by each team. To accomplish this, he used a clever technique pioneered by Albert Bandura in his research on observational learning. After drinking the beverages, each team was taken to a room where they were allowed to begin playing a new and exciting game, only to have it taken away and told that it was for a special team. This would frustrate the teens to reveal bad behavior there where they had them in a controlled environment and could observe them. So, objective 8, the dependent variable is measured and analyzed to see if there is a significant effect. So step 5 is analyzing the resulting data. Lastly, the wizard analyzed the data to see if there was a statistically significant difference between the average number of bad behavior incidences between the two groups. And there was. The treatment group, those that had consumed the new grog, had more incidents of bad behavior afterwards than the control group. Well, thought the Wizard of Oz, Princess Leia's theory was correct. My magic strongly suggests the new grog caused the bad behavior. So what was the magic? The series of precise steps in the experimental method. Happy ending. And so it was that truth had been revealed by the magic of the Wizard of Oz. Sir Lionheart and Princess Leia were married, and King Crimson's game was restored to game night and the new grog destroyed. They all lived happily ever after, and now you understand the magic. Let's summarize. Lionheart had made the nearly irresistible thinking error in assuming that correlation proves causation. No matter how strong the link, it does not. If an experiment had been conducted, it would have been revealed that there was not a causal relationship between the Game of Thrones and bad behavior, even though there was, in fact, a correlational relationship. Thinking there was a causal relationship, King Crimson withdrew the game, but the bad behavior continued, demonstrating that correlation does not mean causation. In fact, there was a lurking variable that led to the bad behavior that had not been considered. Lionheart went to the Wizard of Oz, who conducted an experiment that confirmed their new hypothesis that it was this lurking variable, or the new grog that had been introduced at the same time as the new game, that was actually causing the bad behavior. The experimental method is the only form of research that takes the steps to reveal a causal relationship between variables. Hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you learned, and go ahead and take the 10-question quiz. Feel free to use your notes that you copied down, the objectives. As well, you're going to be turning in the objectives, and you can bring it to class with you next time. Sweet dreams.